difference between time when you were flying around with freight on an airplane. And I make that same distinction between deep time and sort of clock time. But would you elaborate a little bit on how you see time right now and the different ways we think about time?
Well, that incident at Cape Town, in addition to writing, I was photographing for a long time, until 1981. I was a landscape photographer. And whatever impulse I have, rose up in those photographs and rose up in me as a writer. And I just got to a point where I thought, I don't have the strength to push in both of these places. And it was, the decision I made was just to write and put my cameras down. I did for a very specific reason. But I maintain, I would say, that my closest relationships are with other artists, and the reason I maintain those relationships is because in my generation they're trying to do the same thing that I am, or at least I have the conceit that I am, which is to help, to find a way in the arts and in literature to help, to serve the community. And Linda Connor was a photographer whose work I'd always been drawn to, but had not really understood. And her images would go through my mind, and I would think that there's something going on here that I'm just too stupid to see, but one day I'll get it. And I wouldn't have gone and asked her because she might not have known. You know, that's how it works.
Right.
So I was at Cape Town, and for some reason it all just opened up for me there one day. And I saw that what Linda had been photographing, especially in Southeast Asia, was a phenomenon. And it was this: when imperial nations came to Southeast Asia, their effort was primarily an economic effort, to take something, to pay as little as possible for it, to let the culture disintegrate in the process, but essentially to take something. And in order to do that, they militarily, or in terms of the governance they set up, took over the countryside. They were a people who had disintegrated space and time. They had seen these as separate entities, not, say, for example, Aboriginal people in the Northern Territory in Australia today. You can't really get a conversation going that separates space and time. So when white people use this term, the dream time, that's a white person's term. There is no such thing as, there might be something like the dream space-time, because time and space are not separable. But because these colonial nations took over India and the Indochina Peninsula, they never understood that when they forced people to separate space and time, the people took time over as their surviving companion in their original relationship with the place. So even though, say, the British owned everything, they never saw and could never take possession of the time. And Linda's photographs showed you a group of traditional people glorying in the fact that, yes, my home has been taken away from me, but my history, my time, the way I move in increments has not been taken away from me. And a visible expression of that, of course, is music, which deals in the increments of time. So in that moment, I saw that there were ways to assemble and disassemble spatial and temporal frameworks. And it occurred to me that so many of the conventional problems that we talk about today that are international problems, our problems with governance, we're still trying to make this broken down, antiquated, for me, completely useless notion of a nation-state work in the 21st century. It doesn't have any place in society anymore. It's brutal and simple-minded, and where it should there where the touch should be gentle, it's always operated with a fist. So if a goal that we have as a people in the world is to be able to listen to each other as we address truly intractable problems, wouldn't it be a good idea to get people who are battered culture but have maintained a sense of the integrity of time at the table to help us put time and space back together? Because one of the things that happens when you put space and time back together is you're forced to make decisions that are ethical about a place. You can't eliminate the part of it you don't like and take it over and run it into the ground, bleed it to death, and then throw it at the people who once used to belong to it, which is what, what colonial nations have done. So this is really strictly an act of the imagination. If it's possible for Pinjinjara, Aranda, Pinchupi people in the Northern Territory to speak to you in your own language, in using your verb tenses, help you understand a spatial and temporal framework in which the problem that threatens to defeat you doesn't exist, wouldn't that be a good idea?
This reminds me of a friend of mine, Mitch.